Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is setting his sights on South Carolina as his pathway to the Republican nomination is getting a little bit more tricky. So DeSantis, obviously from the get-go, had banked really heavily on a strong performance in Iowa. He dedicated a lot of time and a lot of resources there, and his theory was that a strong showing in the Hawkeye State would ultimately give him a lot of momentum that would propel him to the Republican nomination. But that didn't quite work out for him. Donald Trump just cleaned up in the Iowa caucuses Monday night, and while DeSantis got second, kind of narrowly edging out Nikki Haley, he was almost 30 points behind Trump. So now DeSantis is faced with a pretty difficult path to the nomination because his polling numbers in New Hampshire are pretty anemic, and New Hampshire right now seems to be dominated by Trump and Nikki Haley. And New Hampshire, of course, is the next stop after Iowa, set for next Tuesday. The question for weeks had been, what is DeSantis's theory of the case after Iowa if Iowa doesn't work out? And that's starting to come into focus now. His first stop after the Iowa caucus was South Carolina, and he will be there again this weekend. He's also moved a lot of his campaign resources there as well. So at this point, it is a bit of a Hail Mary by DeSantis. Haley generally has a pretty significant edge in the polling of South Carolina, but the logic is New Hampshire takes place January 23rd. South Carolina is February 24th. There's about a month between, and if he campaigns really aggressively there, he might actually really be able to turn things around. Of course, in between New Hampshire and South Carolina, you have Nevada and the Virgin Islands, but it seems like none of the candidates are really taking that too seriously. The Virgin Islands isn't a delegate-rich contest, and Nevada really seems to be dominated by Trump. There's been a lot of controversy about the process there. So it seems like South Carolina is really the next big contest that everyone's focusing on. And DeSantis' team really seems to think that despite the fact that Haley was a former governor in South Carolina, she actually has a lot of weaknesses there and isn't quite super popular with a lot of the voters there. For example, he's touted a lot of the endorsements he's gotten from current and former South Carolina lawmakers, and he actually has more endorsements than Haley has from her own state, despite the fact that she was governor there. So DeSantis' team has kind of pointed that out as evidence that Haley has vulnerabilities in South Carolina.